Good morning and welcome to the 2021 Confidential Financial Disclosure Kickoff. I'm Patrick Shepard. I'm a senior instructor here at the Institute for Ethics and Government, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by my colleagues Suzanne Meyer, Michelle Worthington, and Cheryl Kane-Piasecki. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Patrick. Nice to be here and be here with everyone today. I'm Suzanne. I'm a desk officer with the Office of Government Ethics, and prior to joining OGE, I was in other government agencies, and I've done my share of reviewing confidential financial disclosure reports. So I look forward to discussing those with you today.
Excellent. Welcome, Michelle.
And Michelle?
Hi, good morning. I'm Michelle Worthington. I am an instructor in the Institute for Ethics and Government as well, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Kane-Piasecki. I'm a lead instructor with the Institute for Ethics and Government, and I'm really pleased to be here with you today to kick off our confidential financial disclosure planning for our filing season. I think out of the box, we want to recognize that under normal circumstances, this is a busy time of the year, and it's a challenge for planning for confidential financial disclosure. Given all of the holidays and all of the activities that are going on that can disrupt your access to staff and your preparedness. And now we've compounded that with the unique challenges of this being our first confidential filing in the midst of a pandemic with a remote workforce. So the complications of, for those of you who used to collect paper forms, now having to do PDF forms and educating your filers about that. For those of you who have created e-filing systems in response to this, standing up those e-filing systems and all of the bugs and things that need to be worked out from that. So that on top of, to complicate things even further, because of course it is still 2020, we have a presidential transition that we're having to prepare for, and the disruptions and the additional work that is involved with that. So really, your preparation for your confidential financial disclosure season can't start soon enough. So in that vein, we actually OGE convened two peer-to-peer discussion sessions where we invited some ethics officials, DEOs and alternate DEOs, to attend two small working group discussions to begin to identify the common challenges that many departments and agencies face in implementing their confidential financial disclosure programs, and to brainstorm some strategies for dealing with those challenges. In what we've done with that information that we got from those agency ethics officials is we've created a document, it's a job aid, with the findings of these groups. And so what I'm going to do now is to turn it over to Suzanne and Michelle, and they're going to share with you the findings and highlight with you some of the findings that came out of those two peer-to-peer working group discussions. Suzanne? Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick.
I was just going to say, for folks who want to follow along, if the text is a little small on the slide, you can download the document in the material section on the page where you're watching this right now.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Cheryl. So, yeah, as Cheryl said, this is an incredibly busy season that we're all facing, and you have your hands full, that is for sure. So planning in advance and laying the groundwork for doing your financial disclosure reviews coming into this filing season is key to having a successful program. And some of the issues that our peer-to-peer groups discussed were staffing, resources, and training, which you can see on the planning aid. And I'm going to discuss some of the goals that our groups had and some of the tactics they mentioned for getting to those goals. The first one is meet the 60-day review deadline. So as most of you know, and should know going into the season, within 60 days you have to do a technical and conflicts of interest review of your reports that come in. And that's in 2634.605. And how do you meet that deadline when you have a glut of reports coming in all at once? Well, some of our, what we came to suggestions, what some of our attendees suggested was staggering filing notifications to your filers. So instead of setting one deadline with one notification coming out and having reports come in all at once, stagger those deadlines. So have reports come in, say, they're all due by February 15th, so have them come in, some come in, say, December, well, not December, January 5th, and then, you know, a week after that, a week after that. That's one way to meet that 60-day deadline. We also looked at how to complete supervisory intermediate reviews timely. So for those of you who use an intermediate reviewer, not all of you do, but for those of you who do, you know, sometimes those reports can languish in their inboxes, and you're waiting to get those reports reviewed and completed, signed off, but they're with the supervisor. So how can you make it easier with the supervisor so they can get that report back to you? One suggestion was to provide supervisors with a 450 checklist so they can go through a checklist and they don't have to feel like they, you know, if they're not used to reviewing reports, that can help them get to the end of their intermediate review and get the report to you. Another thing we looked at was that was a challenge, and we turned that into a goal, is training ethics program managers and new staff, because you want to have a full, complete staff on hand to review the reports that come in, and some of you are short-staffed. We've seen this in annual questionnaires, and we heard about that at our peer-to-peer sessions. So we also heard that a lot of reviewers were getting bogged down by having to do ministerial duties instead of being able to get to the you know, the heart of the program, which is reviewing the reports, identifying conflicts of interest. So one way to address this is to get program managers or even established program managers in your program and train them to handle these administrative duties, to log in new reports and do all the administrative tasks necessary so you can do your job. Another thing we looked at was coordinating review guidelines with regional ethics staff. So many programs out there, maybe yours is decentralized, and you have regional staff, and they're doing their thing and you're doing your thing, but you're not on the same page. And that could pose a problem, especially if you're not holding the same standards for review across the agency. So one way we looked at addressing that was to hold online meetings like we're doing right now, virtual meetings, so that your regional staff is on board with what the central office is doing. Another category we looked at was timely, accurate reporting. So a goal that our participants came up with was providing filers with resources to improve accurate reporting. So you may get reports where a filer lists diversified mutual funds, over-reporting, leaves off spousal information, includes too much spousal information. So how do you get them to file an accurate report so they're not over-reporting and you can do your job in a timely fashion? And one of our colleagues suggested distributing a list of common filing mistakes. So if you send this to your filers and they see what not to report, what to report, a bulleted list, that's going to help them, and that's going to save time, help them file quicker, more accurately, help you do your job more quickly. We also looked at enlisting agency leadership to support timely filing. If you don't have the backing of your leadership, it's going to really impair your program. And if you have their backing and you're waiting for reports to come in and they can get behind your effort. It's going to ensure that you have a successful program. And you can see on this planning aid, some of the text is highlighted. Those are leadership notes from our director to your agency heads. And I encourage you to look at those. If you need to send those out again, please do. But it lists the obligations of your leadership in supporting the program. Also, 2638 in your Title V lists the obligations of the HR staff, supervisors, and your agency heads. So you may want to review those before you jump into the filing season. We also looked at improving quality of annual reporting. So you want to make sure that reports that come in are completed accurately, especially new entrant reports for those new filers who are going to be annual filers. Once their reports are correct, you want to make sure that they have the correct version if you make a change to the report, so that when they file their annual reports, they're filing a corrected, if their electronic system pre-populates, you want to make sure it's pre-populating the correct information. And now another issue we looked at was logistical and technical issues, and Michelle Worthington is going to discuss some of those with you. Michelle?
Thank you, Suzanne. Another topic that we discussed are the logistical and technical challenges that agencies encounter. Working remotely has added another layer to the challenges that existing logistical and technical issues pose. Many agencies are faced with not only the usual system upgrades, but now there's the added burden of working remotely. One of the tactics discussed in the sessions is to reach out to your IT department. They can give you a heads up on when new upgrades are released and how the upgrades may impact filing and reviewing your 450s. Also, to assist reviewers and filers, you may want to create a brief video tutorial or a worksheet highlighting these changes. Another challenge agencies face is how to manage PDF report filing. Many of your filers are used to filling out a paper report and handing it over to their reviewers. However, this year, the majority of filers will use a fillable PDF for their 450s, and some may be filing a PDF for the first time. You may want to provide filers with explicit instructions on how to use the PDF, including where to send it once they've completed it. Meeting the logistical and technical challenges presented by the pandemic can be daunting at times. Have your IT department set up the ability to sign documents and reports using digital signatures. You may also want to factor in that there will be periodic system outages. OGE has released a program advisory in March with suggested steps that ethics officials can take for maintaining ethics program continuity while working remotely. We have provided a link to this program advisory for your convenience. And now I will hand this off to Suzanne, and she can review the last section.
Thanks, Michelle. So another issue that came up at our sessions was identifying and tracking filers. So a goal is to track all filers, including new entrants and annual filers, in one place. So, as you're going through the season, you're still going to get new filers on board, and maybe somebody is detailed to a filer position. You want to make sure you track all the reports and make sure none of these are falling through the cracks. So one suggestion in our group, it's very simple. If you don't have an electronic filing tracking system, create an Excel spreadsheet with this information that's centralized, so that if you have one person in one office, one person in another, they're helping you out, you have all the filers in one place. So, and with their deadlines for filing reports. So the new entrant filer, depending on when they came on board, who they are, do they need to file an annual? Keep all that in a centralized location so that all your ethics staff has that information, and you can make sure people are filing timely. We also looked at making sure that you're getting onboarding when new employees are being onboarded. If they're a filer, making sure you know about it. So partner with HR, IT, and supervisors to identify new filers in the agency throughout the year. So I know I was at one agency, and one thing that we did was we made sure, and I know other agencies, this came up in our group discussions as well, make sure that the ethics office is involved in the onboarding process, that you're a step in that onboarding process, so that when the information of a new employee is coming through the agency and they're a filer, you are notified, so that you don't have somebody who's fallen through the cracks, who might have a conflict of interest, who's required to file, and you don't know about them. I want to mention overall for the success, one suggestion that came up for helping filers file and making sure you're getting information from your filers is to establish office hours and a financial disclosure mailbox. This way, you let your filers know you're available, at a certain time. If you need to set a chunk of time per day, let them know you're available, and set up a financial disclosure mailbox so that you have all the questions, correspondence coming through one place. So you're all, again, you and your staff are on the same page, and you can keep track of your filers. And that's our planning aid. I highlighted some of the text. You can go through and read it, and hope you find it useful. I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle and Suzanne. I think one of the big themes that we have is that preparation is going to be really important this year, because we are facing unprecedented challenges with our filing season, and we sort of complicate those with the presidential transition on top. So we do hope that you will use this planning aid to start now thinking about how your program is going to prepare and how you're going to use the resources that OG makes available to make sure that you have the people and the skills necessary to navigate this filing season. So I think what Cheryl and I would like to do now is to share with you and walk you through some of the resources that are available on the Institute for Ethics in Government that you can use right now to help get your folks refreshed if they haven't reviewed in a little while, if you need new people coming on board, and sort of start thinking about those use cases and how you can use the resources. So what I'm going to do in just a second here is to flip over and take you on a little tour of the OG website, which is a news site, and then we'll spend some time talking about how you can use the resources that are available. So if you've not been to OG's new website, over the summer we launched the new OGE website, and we hope you're finding it helpful, easier to use than the previous site. And we want to start by showing you where the Institute for Ethics in Government lives now. So if you're watching this, you've probably found it already. But if you haven't, it's under Resources for Ethics Officials, and it's under Visit the Institute for Ethics in Government. We hope you're finding this page to be useful. We've tried to bring together the legal authorities you need to advise employees with the program management and program support tools that are necessary for running a program. So if we click on View, Visit the Institute for Ethics in Government, it takes you to the home page. And from here, you can see upcoming classes, this class, and there's another class next week. But you can also visit the education library. And this is where you'll find all the resources related to the substantive work of ethics. And if you're looking for the confidential curriculum, I find the easiest way to find curricula is to just untick all the boxes that are not curricula. And the confidential one is right here. We did mention that we are in the midst of a presidential transition, so you may also be thinking about training staff on nominee financial disclosure review. And we also know that the public season follows the confidential season, so you can find those curricula as well. So we have the nominee financial disclosure curriculum. So if you have a need to bring nominee reviewers up to speed, that's available here. And also the public financial disclosure curriculum, which has a lot of resources that are helpful to new public reviewers, but may also be helpful for especially complex 450s. But today we're talking about confidential financial disclosure review. So we're going to just take a look at the curriculum. And I think Cheryl's going to help us sort of navigate this rather long document.
Yes, absolutely. So we're pleased to be able to provide you with this review curriculum. As you'll see, we have it The Unit 1 is effectively a primer on everything you need to know about confidential financial disclosure, irrespective, frankly, of your roles. So the information that's contained in Unit 1, and I'm going to walk through each of these constituent parts here in a second, but I want to make it clear that whether you are someone who is responsible for identifying and tracking, you're responsible for the administrative program management aspects of the program, whether you're someone who is going to be a technical reviewer primarily, whether you're someone who is going to be an intermediate reviewer or a substantive reviewer and certifier, this Unit 1 is effectively a one-stop shop for an overarching introduction to the system, the confidential financial disclosure system. Now, first on that list and place of prominence is the queen of the parade. The queen of the parade is the Confidential Financial Disclosure Guide. This is a cannot do without resource. Anyone who's working in 450 filing and review in the system should have this at their ready. It covers everything from the system requirements, the purpose of confidential financial disclosure filing, to the form, to the review, and then it also offers an expansive discussion of discrete types of assets that you would expect to see, holdings that you would expect to see on a 450 with explicit descriptions for how these should be reported. So this, again, is your primary resource that you should be using if you're involved in 450 review. Now, going through that document by itself, as with any other document, is a bit of a dry read. So the next item on our Unit 1 list is an introduction to the system, the form, and the review process. This is a 3-part video series that effectively is a guided tour, in part, of the OGE Form 450 guide. So particularly in parts 1 and 2 of that video series, we are effectively introducing you to the relevant parts of the OGE Confidential Financial Disclosure Guide, so that you can become familiar with those aspects without literally having to read it cover to cover. So we would highly recommend that anyone who is involved take a look at that 3-part introductory series, because it will give you a fulsome view of every aspect of confidential financial disclosure filing. The next item on that list is for if you have supervisors who engage in review, or you have intermediate reviewers of any sort. This video was produced specifically with those roles in mind. This video effectively, because those are substantive reviews typically that you're asking a supervisor or an intermediate reviewer to do, it's effectively it's not a deep dive into conflict of interest analysis, but it will introduce your supervisors and your intermediate reviewers to what a conflict of interest is, fundamentally what they should be looking for when trying to identify a conflict of interest. So it's sort of a cursory treatment of conflict of interest, but it's more than sufficient to enable those folks to do the work, the job that you're asking them to do. And then finally, we have a worksheet that is then mentioned in the document that Suzanne just overviewed, which is a checklist that you can hand out to anyone who's going to assist you in designating filing positions. So it takes you through the criteria that are listed in 2634 for how you determine whether or not someone should be filing a confidential financial disclosure report. And so anyone who's responsible for engaging in that designation process, this is a job aid that you can use.
That was great, Cheryl. And I think I really like this first collection in Unit 1, because if I were at an agency and I was bringing a handful of new reviewers up to speed, I might think of this as sort of 1 or 2 weeks worth of instruction, and ask that those new reviewers find some time over the next couple of weeks to go through these resources to acquaint themselves with the financial disclosure guide. And then that would allow us to to have a discussion, to sort of start a mentorship kind of situation. So we've tried to lay this out that way. So it's really a tool for DAOs and ADAOs and other program leaders to help their folks prepare for the review process. And we know that is a process. So there's probably a mentorship thing that goes along with this, but we're trying to get them kind of to the starting line so they can start that work.
Yes, and so moving on to Unit 2, I mean, and this is really where the mentorship piece can really come into play. Unit 2 is a practice exercise. And effectively what we've done here, this is another video, we've created an exercise. We've created a profile for a filer. We've created a hypothetical, I guess you would say, filing for that filer. And then we basically set you to the task of conducting a review of that report based on the information you have about the filer and what the filer has filed on this example of OGE Form 450. And then in a second video, then we actually debrief the exercise where we walk you through the analysis, we walk you through the review of the form. Now, this is something that people can do at their own pace. It can also serve as a model for you. So if you were to have, for example, assign this out to a group of new staff and debrief it together to review it and debrief it together, you could then use the same model, but actually use one of your own OGE Form 450 filings to get your folks up to speed. This is also something where we would recommend that maybe you have new staff shadow more experienced staff. So you could assign them out something, and your experienced staff could basically use this model as a way of mentoring the person through their first review of a form. But we will be adding to this curriculum as we develop new exercises. And in fact, in January, we anticipate that we will be doing another broadcast, actually, a live broadcast, where we'll create a new practice exercise that you can have new staff attend. But in the interim, I would ask you to get them kind of familiar first before you have them attend that session, because that session really is about you come to the exercise with at least some basic knowledge of the form, of what the review should consist of. So use Unit 1 to get people up to speed, and then use Unit 2 to actually test their learning. And as I said, we'll be adding to that curriculum in January.
I think that's a great idea, Cheryl, and thinking about these tools as a supplement to an on-the-job training program. So, we have some good ideas about how we can use these tools, and using them as a supplement to an on-the-job training program, I think is really a good idea, using that Unit 1 as the starting point. Unit 2 you can use as the possibility to practice a little bit, but also you can help people practice with live reviews. So as Cheryl suggested, the shadowing idea is a very good one if you have an experienced reviewer who can assist colleagues getting up to speed.
And then for Unit 3, basically Unit 3 is, they're additional resources for for those of you who are going to be conducting the substantive reviews. And I would argue that that these are substantive training tools that really everybody should, as you have time, review in whole or in part. As I said, in the Unit 1 materials that we provide, those typically aren't going to be extraordinarily deep dives into the substantive review. That's not to say that we don't address substantive issues even in the practice exercise, but I think for purposes of your getting yourselves and your staff ready to review the kinds of and be prepared to identify the kinds of conflicts and ethics concerns that you're likely to encounter in your filings, would be to the extent that you know what your priority areas are, to the extent that you know what you're typically seeing on the reports that you have reviewed, that you might want to assign new staff to select portions of this curriculum, of this Part 3 of the curriculum. In Part 1, we deal with assets and income. And so what we've tried to identify here for you and provide you with substantive training tools for the kinds of ethics issues that you're likely to encounter with respect to assets and income. So those are primarily going to be 18 USC section 208 and impartiality considerations. So we've given you a playlist, for example, that does a deeper dive into conflicts and impartiality. One of the tools that I really do want to alert you all to, because I think it's a very handy and very accessible conflict of interest tool, which is the Analyzing Potential Conflicts of Interest web guide. On our webpage, on OGE's webpage, we have a series of these very brief but very succinct analyses of specific kinds of holdings and specific kinds of assets, and how one does a conflict of interest analysis on those specific kinds of holdings or assets. So those are really good for your folks where it's a very targeted discussion of a particular type of asset and the conflicts. And I think if you have those kinds of conflicts that typically arise for you, again, it's a really easy, accessible, short, but succinct way to get your folks up to speed on how they should be viewing and how they should be analyzing those types of conflicts. Similarly, for each subsequent part, what we've done under each part is to, again, try to identify what are the likely types of issues you're going to be seeing with that kind of reporting. So for liabilities, we have another one of these web-based conflict of interest considerations that deals specifically with liability. So when you're looking at a liability, how could this possibly present an ethics issue? That's a resource that's available. For part 3 with outside positions, we have a series of videos and we have a table of applicable authorities that could be particularly useful, because what we have found with outside activities is when you're dealing with an outside activity, you're potentially dealing with the entire universe of ethics authorities. And so it's really kind of been difficult to sort of just hone in on any one particular ethics issue. And what you'll see in these resources is that we really do address and try to get you familiar with the full body of ethics law and regulation that you're going to need to have at least a part under your belt to deal with outside positions and outside activities.
I think that's a great point in general, Cheryl, is that the review of the confidential financial disclosure reports seems a lot like sort of a paperwork exercise, but really it's requires the knowledge and sort of familiarity with almost all of the ethics laws and regulations. So, when you're looking at this huge body of legal information, this is necessary information for the reviewers who are going to be advising employees about the potential for conflicts of interest, about the steps they need to take to avoid conflicts. So, we think about the form as just a form. It has a few pages. You need to be able to look at them and understand them. That is part of it. But having this substantive knowledge, someone's going to need that in order to advise employees about the potential for conflict.
Yeah, and so then finally, in our final units, we have agreements and arrangements, and for part 4. And here, because we're going to be you're dealing largely with payments from prior employers, we include things like 18 USC section 209, and there's a specific provision in the impartiality provisions for payments from prior employers. And we have a job aid there that helps walk you through any 209 or any impartiality considerations with respect to those kinds of things. And the other main thing that you're typically going to see under that section would be any arrangements for future employment. So we've, of course, included a MOOC that we've did, an overview. This is a video series that deals with seeking and negotiating for employment. Again, just trying to highlight those things that we think are going to be most likely the ethics issues that you're going to experience when you're reviewing those particular parts of the form. And then finally, under gifts and travel reimbursements, we have another MOOC that deals with seasonal gifts to give you a refresher on the gifts provisions. And we also have a table which has gifts of travel and related benefits, because we know that travel is quite often a source of payment for our filers.
Yeah, so we have a lot of resources, and this is the kickoff. So this is the beginning when you're probably going to want to start thinking about putting these tools into use. So if you've joined us today and you're thinking about your program, we'd encourage you to take some some proactive steps starting now. So maybe that involves sharing the intermediate reviewer video with the intermediate reviewers in your program. That's something they could start doing now if they have some free time as work maybe wanes during the holidays. Likewise, if you need to get reviewers up to speed, you can start working through these various units so that people can really hit the ground running and be an asset to your program as soon as the reports start coming in January. We know this year's going to be challenging. We know we have the logistical hurdles associated with the pandemic, but our hope is that by starting early and making good use of these resources, you can navigate this filing season without too much difficulty, and also being successful at protecting your agencies from potential conflicts of interest. So we know everyone's time is very valuable, but we are extremely grateful for you taking the time to talk with us. We hope maybe you found something today that you can take away and put to use immediately in your program. And we look forward to providing you confidential financial disclosure and other training opportunities in the future. So until next time, thanks very much for joining us.